Hi there, welcome to Neppy Invest. So today I'm going to talk about a company called Spectur. I've done a brief video on this company in regards to the Appendix 4C that was released about a month ago. It was a sort of a normal announcement or quarter they had in the previous 3 months. But they did release an announcement on the 24th of November that the market took quite well to, and the share price rallied 32% based off this announcement on extreme volume. So when you see share price rally quite highly on really high volume, that's always a bullish sign. So in this video, I'm going to dissect this announcement, just look at it, look at the details of the company, look at some of their financials, look at their cash flow reports from previous quarters, and have a look at their technicals. So let's get into the business itself. Just a brief look into the business. So what do they do? So they're into security camera and surveillance systems. So not really a sexy sector they're in, but you know, this sort of company is always needed because security and surveillance, especially on those remote sites, are always needed. Now, their program or the system can detect movement, and the AI can, interestingly enough, differentiate between vehicles, animals, and people who are there to do bad things. And when there's people there to do bad things, the system will alert the site through an audio message or lighting, so the intruder will know they have been detected. And usually when an intruder knows they've been detected, they will stop doing any nefarious things. They also, so when you go talk about surveillance, so an owner of a site will be able to observe the site remotely via an app or website, and they also can communicate with the site. So some simple things they're doing there. Some of the industries they're involved with and leading to contracts with. So what you would expect: government, utilities, and construction. And they're combating illegal dumping, antisocial crime. They also, through the government, can respond to, say, bushfires and prevent trespassing, theft, and vandalism, and also improve safety. They also have this shark detention system in West Australia, I believe it is. So, Spectur, they listed on the ASX in 2017, around 40 cents or so, and since then the share price has been in the doldrum. The market really hasn't taken kindly to the company at all. In fact, when you see the share price decrease the most around 2018, we saw very low volume. We've seen the volume pick up over the last few years, especially the last 6 months or so, and that's typically a good bullish sign. But you also could argue the reason the volume has increased the last few months is just because the share price has decreased by so much. And if the share price decreases by so much, more shares of that's going to be traded just because the share price is so low. So really no reason to buy into this company just based off the share price going down and down and down. So they needed some sort of inflection point, some sort of financial news, some sort of sign, and the company is moving forward, and the management is, is doing good things. And when you look at their cash receipts, so just going through their cash flow reports through their history, there was a very slow growth from October 17 to the end of last year into the start of this year. So it went from 390,000 to 1.5 million in cash receipts. Last few months or last few quarters, it's been going backwards, and that's because of COVID-19. But their question also there is how they're doing with COVID-19 recovery. And we did see a bit of a trough there in the last quarter, 1.0 million in cash receipts. The market didn't really take kindly to that. Share price fell by 13%. That means the market cap before this particular announcement was only about $5 million. So that's fairly cheap, especially for a company that's very close to being cash flow positive. So they're almost at that point. In fact, a couple of quarters they've just gone beyond being cash flow positive. And the other fairly bullish thing is they do have a new product, STA6, that's coming to market, and they are seeing quite a bit of business or new business with that new product. Now, the AGM, so sometimes you do get a lot of good things at AGMs. Management is open to telling how they're going through the last few months, how they're looking for the new financial year. So at this AGM, there were a few hints by management in regards to how they're doing. Now, sometimes you've got to take some of these comments with a grain of salt, because sometimes management can be a little bit too bullish, and they can just sort of focus on the positives and ignore the negatives. They did mention that the STA6 platform has been well received by market. That's good enough to say, but I'd like to see some proof of that. And probably the big thing here is they mentioned that demand has outstripped supply, which is a good thing on the one hand, but is also a negative thing on the other. It means their products are being well received by the market. But it also could mean that the management just hasn't expected that increase in demand and really hasn't factored that into their production, which could be a fairly big negative. And I'd like to see how they're responding to that demand outstripping supply. Have they put anything into place to deal with that fact? And if they have put something into place, maybe that's going to be a fairly big positive. They also have a vision, given their vision for the next few years, they want to be a $20 million revenue company, which may not seem a lot, but the fact that they're $5 or $6 million revenue now means there is significant growth there. And especially if they can increase their margins, decrease their costs, they could be profitable by that time, which they expect to be. They also mentioned they are looking at a joint venture into New Zealand, so they're expanding into another country, and that looks like whenever I see that sort of thing, it can be positive and it can be negative at the same time. So I don't always view that as a positive sign because a lot of companies fail when they try to expand overseas. So this is the announcement that the market went, I won't say bonkers about, but it did really like this announcement. I actually liked it too, just because of some of the things they've mentioned in this announcement. So they did give some financial numbers here. In regards to new contracts in October 2020. So some of these contracts are recurring revenues. So you're looking at companies buying their platforms outright. So they did sell their hardware. That was 25 of their STA6 and HD5. But they also rented out 46 platforms. And the rental contracts they do have tend to be higher margins. And that I really like to see a company increase their margins over time because that always goes to the bottom dollar. So they want to see more companies rent out in place of buying outright. So it looks like more companies are renting instead of outright buying, and that's going to their bottom line. That's some good news. I really like that they gave details of the contracts, where they're getting these contracts, sort of the industries they're having this. So they don't always mention the company here, and that's because the company they've sold to or the customer doesn't want to be named for security reasons. So, for instance, they have 2 HD5 purchases by a major telecom provider, and it wasn't named. They've also gone into the agricultural security customers, future wind farm utilities, storage yards, major transport infrastructure. So a wide range of industries or areas they're selling their product and renting out their product. Also like to see what sort of pipeline they have here. So they've mentioned they've got advanced verbal approvals for 45 STA6 systems, including their new STA Pro. So not only do they have an new system, STA Pro, the 6 Pro, STA6 system, they've got different levels of different levels of that STA6. So they've got a base, a Pro, all that sort of thing. You see that Pro offers 360-degree panoramic vision in 16K, so it's pretty exciting. Now they've also, they've just downplayed these potential verbal agreements because they've just mentioned here, just because they've reached some verbal agreements doesn't mean that's going to involve or proceed in the future. And I like to see management sort of suppress that optimism a little bit. I like to see them being less bullish and just talk about some of the risks there. They've mentioned something about they have expect to introduce a new offering, hardware as a service, HaaS. So I'm always interested in as a service products. Now this is going to sit between rentals and hardware purchase options. So they're doing both. The higher margins are the rentals, and maybe HaaS falls just lower margins than rentals. I'm not sure. I'm not certain how it's different than rentals. So this is something I'm going to have to research to see just how it differs from rentals. It sounds like it's very similar to the rental option, but that's something I really want to research because it is interesting to me. And then I've mentioned before, they mentioned before in their AGM that demand has outstripped supply, and they've mentioned here how they've responded to that, which is exactly what I wanted to hear. And it looks like they have responded to that quite positively. So this is how the market responded. So share price, went up 32%. But the thing that really interested me is how much the volume just exploded on this day. So in previous years, or since their IPO, the greatest volume we've seen in about a week was about 5 million or so shares traded. We've seen on that one day something like 23 million shares traded. And so the market got really interested in this. No doubt we saw day traders come into the market and over 25 million shares traded. So this volume here does not include, it's only ASX, so it does not include GX shares traded. So when you combine the two, it was over 25 million shares traded on the two platform systems. And when you consider the shares on issue and Spectur is about 100 million, we saw a quarter of the shares traded on this day. Of course, some of those shares are going to be traded multiple times during the day. The other thing I like to see is how the market responds on subsequent days. And we've seen the share price just sort of go sideways from there. Share price finished at 7.6, ASX did. GX actually finished at 8.1 cents. So if you include GX in this, it finished up here, we actually went higher. So that's actually one thing. If you look at, say, ComSec, on their side, the share price finished at 8.1 cents, so it was positive. But if you look at like the charts, it actually went down to 7.6 just because this is only based off ASX shares traded, if that makes sense. I'm not sure why they do that, but anyway. And the question is, with that sort of volume traded, no doubt there's a lot of day traders interested in the company, looking for a quick buck or two. The question is, have funds become interested in the company? So that's what I'm looking for now, is funds starting to buy in. So that's sort of the next leg up, is when you start to see funds, so especially those small cap funds, buy into a company. That's when you start to see potential of the share price growing forward. I'm not sure we've seen any funds interested in this company in the past, especially because the volume's been so low. But this is a potential sign that funds could be starting to get interested in this company. So these are my thoughts on this company. So I've taken a very small position in the company based off the AGM. I thought a very small position, and then I can add to that position if they start to execute on their promise. That's a big way of putting it, is just they execute on their promise, I'll start to buy more and more. So that's what we call averaging up. I'm not a big fan of averaging down, but if they do fulfill their promises, averaging up could be a way to go. So the first question is this announcement a inflection point? I would like to see confirmation, and confirmation would be being cash flow positive. And that's a big positive, big sort of tick in my book, is when a company reaches that cash flow positive point, they're generating money, the business is generating money, and they can use that cash to expand research and development, acquisitions, that sort of thing, and they don't have to go back to the market for a capital raising. So always looking out for companies who have become cash flow positive, because that's a very big sign that the company could be moving forward in leaps and bounds. Another question is how strong is their moat? It's not a very sexy industry. Do they have competitors? How big are their competitors? Are there possible acquisitions at play here? So consolidation of the competition. So, for example, in the finance sector, say SG Fleet, Macmillan Shakespeare, Smart Group, that sort of financing of companies, sort of cars sort of area. There's 10 players in that sector, and I think there needs to be consolidation of companies. So they've talked about mergers and acquisitions in one of their announcements. So how strong is their moat? Can they deal with competition? Is anyone offering the same sort of products they are doing? So another company that, for example, is AVA Risk Group. They also monitor or do security monitoring, and how close are these two companies? So market cap still less than 10 million, so very cheap. And so that's the main reason I bought into the company for a short stake, because I thought at this point in time, the rewards much are greater than the risks. So again, yeah, very high reward if management can execute. And that's the big question moving forward. Management need to execute. And if they can execute, the potential rewards moving forward are quite high. And the potential is quite high as well. So that's all I've got on Spectur for this episode. Hope you've enjoyed the video. And again, I'm not a financial expert, so if you do need financial expertise for your own financial circumstances, make sure you seek out someone who is qualified. If you are a Spectur shareholder, which I don't think there's many out there, maybe leave a comment or two, but this is a company taking a small stake in, and I'll be interested to see how they do in the future. The next cash flow report, which will be released late January, is going to be fairly interesting to see how quickly those cash receipts have grown in this quarter. So that's all for today. Have a good day. Bye.